Now, with the very latest from around the world and here at home at this Sunday evening, it's the ITV News.
No let-up in the Israeli onslaught. Missile strikes hammer the heart of Tehran. More than 200 reported dead. Iran's revenge, a direct hit to the centre of Israel. 9 are killed there.
We have every right, every legitimate right to defend ourselves. What the United States is doing is an act of aggression.
Well, tonight we arrived in Erbil in Iraq near the Iranian border and witnessed in minutes how the war across the Middle East is escalating. An Iranian missile hits a US base just miles away from here. 3 US service members have died since the war began. Also on News at 10 tonight, how the seismic death of the Ayatollah divides his people, a contrast of jubilation and mass mourning. An interim leader is announced, but what next for the regime? Rohit will bring us his assessment and... With tens of thousands of Brits stranded in the UAE and other Gulf states, the government plans one of its biggest ever evacuations.
While we're inside the hotel, the staff have been really good. You can hear the odd missile in the background.
From northern Iraq, this is ITV News at 10 with Julie Etchingham.
Well, good evening from Erbil in northern Iraq and from a Middle East convulsed by a second day of war. After the massive strikes launched by the US and Israel on Saturday morning, today the barrage of hits on Tehran continued. Smoke visible across the skyline as the death toll rises above 200. Israel says it is focusing on the heart of the Iranian capital. But Iran is trying to fight back, targeting Israel, where 9 died in the town of Bet Shemesh, plus Qatar, Kuwait, the UAE, where many British holidaymakers and expats are taking shelter, and here in Erbil in Iraq. There have been multiple attacks on the US airbase near the airport just 8 miles from where we are, with the Iranian border 60 miles away to our east. Trump warned there would be US casualties. Today, 3 personnel were confirmed killed in action. Meanwhile, in Iran, where many had been desperate to flee the bombings, there had been 2 contrasting emotions. For some, jubilation at the demise of the Ayatollah. For others, mass mourning on the streets.
The bombing campaign against regime targets has continued without pause. The Israeli military releasing these images of a huge set of strikes against a compound belonging to the Iranian security forces. And for much of the day, smoke has billowed over Tehran. The view from homes revealing the severity of this second day of attacks. Some Iranians on the streets have been celebrating the US and Israeli strikes, hoping it will trigger the regime's collapse. Several seen attacking a building belonging to the despised internal security forces. But others, the loyalists, have been mourning Ayatollah Khamenei's death and vowing revenge. In the central Iranian city of Yazd, thousands gathered to protest the attacks. This is a theocracy that may prove surprisingly resilient. And they chanted the familiar slogan, "Death to America." The announcement last night on Iranian TV of Khamenei's death reduced the news presenter to tears. According to the Iranian foreign minister, there is no resulting power vacuum. He says Iran had every right to respond militarily.
We are defending ourselves, and we have every right, every legitimate right to defend ourselves. what the United States is doing is an act of aggression.
And respond they have. Waves of drones have been launched, including a strike on a US airbase in Kuwait. The American base in Erbil in northern Iraq was also struck, reportedly by an Iranian proxy Shiite militia. One ballistic missile penetrated Israel's defensive shield and caused devastation west of Jerusalem, with 9 fatalities. The Pentagon has today released this footage of US forces firing missiles at Iranian launch sites. And despite the first American casualties of the war, with 3 US soldiers dead, Donald Trump late tonight described the mission as on track.
Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead. This wretched and vile man had the blood of hundreds and even thousands of Americans on his hands and was responsible for the slaughter of countless thousands of innocent people all across many countries. This is the duty and the burden of a free people. These actions are right and they are necessary to ensure that Americans will never have to face a radical, bloodthirsty terrorist regime armed with nuclear weapons and lots of threats.
And today, the ominous ripple effects of the war are becoming clear. From an Iranian strike on an oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman to riots on the streets of Karachi. Here, a crowd of protesters attacked the US consulate in the city, breaking into the outer perimeter before security forces responded, killing several demonstrators. The cost of this war is coming into ever sharper focus. Iranian authorities are now saying more than 150 schoolgirls were killed at the scene of yesterday's strike. And today, a hospital in Tehran had to be evacuated amid the bombing. 2 days into this war, there is no sign of regime collapse. And what happens next is entirely unclear.
Well, it is indeed, Robert. Robert's joining us from Washington tonight. First of all, we've had confirmation of these US deaths this afternoon, Robert. What else is the President saying tonight? Are we any clearer on any form of strategy here?
Well, in that 5-minute address, Julie, which seemed essentially to be talking to both the American and the Iranian people, he called for a regime mutiny, a kind of revolution from within. He said that the Revolutionary Guard, the military, the Iranian police should lay down their weapons, or Trump said they would face certain death. And after that, he then turned directly to talk to Iranian activists and protesters, saying to them, be brave, be bold, be heroic, take over your country, saying the rest is up to you, we will be with you to help. I think what is so striking from here is that the sheer scale of this gamble. There's no consensus of opinion here in favour of this war. There's been no authorisation with Congress here. There's been no engagement with the UN, no real consultations with the Europeans either. So, look, for better or for worse, we don't know how this will play out. We do know, I think, that the consequences will be owned by Benjamin Netanyahu and by President Trump.
Okay, Robert, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, Emma joins me here, and I mean, it's no understatement or overstatement or whatever to say that the scale and the pace of this is growing by the hour. We witnessed it when we arrived in Erbil this afternoon. And tonight, news that Britain will allow the US to use its bases after all. Why the change, and what does that mean?
Well, it came an announcement from the Prime Minister just a short time ago, and it was incredibly carefully worded. And I think, you know, it links it with what Robert just said then about who will carry the responsibility for this. The Prime Minister was very clear. This was going to be a defensive position. This was an attempt to protect allies and British lives. So as a result, American flights will be allowed to use Diego Garcia and RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire to try and take out some of the missile launchers, some of the weaponry that Iran is using against Gulf countries, particularly where British citizens are at risk. And he was very, very eager to stress that they had actually taken significant legal advice to make sure that the position that they were taking was legal. He referenced the fact that, you know, we all remember Iraq, and that is one of the big spectres that hangs over all of this. I mean, we're in Iraq tonight. Nobody has forgotten those wars, and I think that as this plays out, as this whole war gathers momentum, there is a real checks and balance sense from many nations now that they don't want to get caught up without careful thought in other people's wars.
Okay, I know we'll speak again a little later, Emma, for the moment. Thank you very much indeed for that. Well, as we've heard and witnessed here, the impact of Iran's retaliatory strikes had been felt across the Middle East, but nowhere more so than in Israel. At least 9 people died in a missile attack on the town of Bet Shemesh. They had been hiding in a shelter.
The odds are stacked against it, but not only did this Iranian missile evade interception, it struck a public bomb shelter full of people obeying the rules. At least 9 were killed in the town of Bet Shemesh, about 20 miles west of Jerusalem.
Now, the world knows that the Iranian regime is used to targeting their own civilians, and here the world can also see it doesn't differentiate with other nations' civilians either.
When air raid sirens go off, the majority of Israelis are able to take cover either in safe rooms at home or in public shelters. However, Iranian ballistic missiles have half-ton warheads, and even reinforced structures cannot withstand direct hits, which is what happened here. The city of Tel Aviv continues to be Iran's prime target, and there have been regular attacks. Early this morning, our cameraman here recorded these pictures of an incoming salvo being met by interceptor missiles. When it comes to shooting down the Iranian projectiles, Israeli claims of an 85% success rate are entirely plausible, but here is another deadly example of failure. These are 2 Israeli interceptors hunting for a target, which they do eventually lock onto, but miss. The big Iranian missile slammed into central Tel Aviv. In this residential city, civilian casualties were almost inevitable. In fact, the missile struck an apartment block and at least 27 people had to be taken to hospital, where a woman in her 40s died from her injuries. She was the first Israeli killed in this war.
And John joins us now live from Tel Aviv. Good evening to you, John. The threat there across Israel, very real and continuing tonight. What more can you tell us?
Good evening, Julie. Well, I think it's pretty obvious by now that the greatest threat to this entire region comes from Iran's missile arsenal. That's why the Israelis today have been concentrating their fire on the Iranian missile infrastructure. Israeli jets have been bombing missile factories, storage depots and launchers. The Americans have also been doing this, and they'll soon be using British bases to do more of it. This is the most intense aerial campaign ever conducted by the State of Israel over the course of the first 24 hours. Julie, some of the Israeli pilots flew 3 sorties to Iran. So far, they've dropped something like 2,000 bombs, and we're going to see more of this. The Israeli Air Force is in a hurry. They want to save lives at home. There's another reason they're in a hurry. It's the unpredictability of Donald Trump. They're concerned that he's going to call a halt to all this sooner than they would like, so they're getting on with things.
John, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, President Trump called the death of the Ayatollah the single greatest chance of the Iranian people to take back their country, but not everyone sees it that way. The strikes have exposed an inevitable power vacuum, but it's by no means certain the current regime will be toppled. Rohit's been exploring what could happen next.
Julia, I want to take you back to last Thursday, first of all, to Geneva, where talks were underway to de-escalate this crisis. The Iranians were there, the Americans, Omani mediators too, but what looked like diplomacy was in part a moment of duplicity, because we've gained access to an account first reported by the New York Times, now confirmed by ITV News, of what was happening behind the scenes. The CIA had established where Iran's supreme leader was likely to be, when, and crucially, who with. So, a senior meeting at Compound Saturday morning, President Trump decided to strike. Now, ITV News filmed inside that compound 10 years ago, and today our producer, who was on the ground back then, said, yes, there was remarkable security, but the Supreme Leader's use of that compound was no secret. The Americans decided that that moment offered an opportunity to attack not just one man, but the entire mechanism. These are just some of the senior figures who were killed yesterday. An Israeli source with knowledge of the intelligence picture telling ITV News this weekend, the strategic objectives now must be clear to you all. This isn't about one person, they said. Iran's constitution actually anticipates this moment. There it is, Article 111, saying whenever the leader becomes incapable of fulfilling his constitutional duties, power switches to a council consisting of the president, the head of the judicial power, and a member of the Guardian Council too. But even that safeguard may be fragile, because it seems the Iranian president himself might have been, in fact, might still be a target, just as the supreme leader was. And still the missiles come. Attacks of this scale against Gulf countries weren't anticipated. The UAE, with its gleaming city of Dubai, says it's dealt with hundreds of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, Iranian drones as well. Qatar saying it's repelled several dozen. Bahrain, dozens more, and they all hope that Iran will simply run out of weapons in the coming days. But a huge unknown is whether those Gulf countries decide to join the US or demand that they end this. That could still shift the balance. The Americans have been clear about their goals: regime change, an uprising, but they could be a long way away. Regimes tend not to fall under pressure from air power alone. So one outcome could leave Iran with a weakened military, but faces at the top and fundamentally the same regime.
Okay, Rohit, thank you very much indeed for all of that. Well, tens of thousands of British nationals are caught up in the conflict, with major airports, including Dubai, closed until tomorrow at the earliest. Many Gulf Arab states are popular holiday destinations, of course, and there are thousands of British expats in the UAE. Families locked down in their hotels there have told us that the situation is terrifying.
Where the air is thick with smoke and the threat of further Iranian attack, flights are grounded and airports closed. For the many thousands of Britons drawn to Dubai for a low-tax lifestyle or a holiday in late winter sun, there is now no easy way out.
The staff have been really good. You can hear the odd missile in the background.
This is where Kirsty spent last night with her young daughter in the basement of their hotel, their flight home cancelled. Safe shelter after their holiday came jarringly close to the violent reality of war, witnessing this strike on the city's landmark Fairmont Hotel.
It's just terrifying. What sits uneasily is that the nature of the attack seems like quite sporadic. So I'm not sure if it was an accident or like debris that got loose or whatever, but there's a horrible feeling that if people are targeting tourist hotels, like, what's going to happen next?
Iran says it will target any US military presence in the Gulf. In Qatar, strikes were intercepted. there have been the same dramatic duels in the skies over Bahrain, Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, some bases that are home to British forces.
My concern now is the increasingly indiscriminate attacks we're seeing by Iran widely across the Middle East, and those are hitting military as well as civilian targets. That's my priority. Make sure that we can protect UK personnel, military and civilians.
Britons heading to the exit find themselves trapped tonight. Both Dubai and Abu Dhabi's international airports have been hit. Airlines are continuing to cancel flights. The Foreign Office warns against all but essential travel to the region and is said to be working on evacuation plans amid uncertainty and unease for residents and visitors alike.
And John is in Dubai for us tonight. John, with flights grounded and this conflict spiralling, what's the sense you're getting there? What are people feeling in the city?
Well, of course, these are days and nights of heightened anxiety, Julie, as people find themselves on the front line of this war and facing an arsenal of Iranian weapons stockpile for this particular showdown. Amidst all this, there are something like 250,000 British expats in this city, thousands of more here on holiday or caught in transit through the airports that have closed because the airspace has closed. Their most realistic option, only option, frankly, is to hunker down and hope for the best. While the British government works on this evacuation plan, if it happens, it will be on an almost unprecedented scale. Julie, today we drove through 10 hours of desert to get here. For the moment, it is the only way into the Gulf and the only way out.
It's quite a thought, John. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, we can speak now to Jasmine, who's in Downing Street for us tonight. Evening to you, Jasmine. The government's saying it's planning the biggest evacuation potentially of British nationals in its history. What help is it providing to those who are stranded there currently?
That's right. So for British nationals currently stranded in the region, the Foreign Office is urging individuals to firstly follow local safety guidance and secondly to register their presence with the department online. What this means in practice is providing passport details, an email address, a phone number, so the department gets a sense of how many people are in the region. It's estimated that nearly 100,000 people have already done so. The bulk of those are in the UAE and are currently thought to be in transit or holiday makers. Now, we also understand that the Foreign Secretary is looking at possible options for an evacuation plan, is working with the Ministry of Defence to do so, with all options on the table. And certainly as this conflict intensifies, there's going to be lots more pressure on the government to ensure that all British nationals who want to get home can do so safely and quickly.
Jasmine, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, I've been rejoined by Emma just to reflect on this extraordinary weekend, the key event of which, of course, was the assassination of the Ayatollah. But also, we're now thinking about how long this goes on for. President Trump saying that it may be 4 weeks. Who knows? He puts timings on all sorts of things. Just where do you think we are tonight?
Well, if you think about it, it is a hugely seismic moment in terms of the assassination of the Ayatollah. But within days, there will be another Ayatollah. Within days, there will be replacement generals, replacement military structures. And so this is not the bringing down of the regime in Iran. It is a change. It may lead to a chance for more pragmatism from those who take over, but it is not the end. When Donald Trump says it's going to be 4 weeks, that's not something that's actually in his gift, in the same way that it's not in Keir Starmer's gift to say that we're only doing defensive actions. The reality is Iran will assess a part of this. They do have a call on it, and they will take actions. In 4 weeks, we could see an awful lot of human loss of life.
Okay, Emma, thank you very much indeed for that. And that is it from Erbil for tonight, where it's now actually the early hours of Monday morning after a weekend of potentially seismic change in the Middle East. After the death of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's people have been left divided between those jubilant at the demise of a despot and those outraged at the killing of a man they now regard as a martyr. As this internal fight continues, a conflict now threatens to engulf the whole region. President Trump, who's just left Florida for Washington, says he's ready to talk again to the Iranians, but it is likely that many more lives will be lost before what happens next truly becomes clear. From the team here in Erbil and those across the region, good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.